The sun had just started to rise when he walked into the valley that morning. The cool air touched his face, and the soft sound of the small stream nearby made everything feel calm. For him, this place was more than just land. It was a part of his childhood, a place filled with memories of visiting his grandfather, listening to stories, and learning how much this valley meant to their family. Every time he stepped into it, he felt like his grandfather was still with him somehow. He hadn't visited for a few months because of work, so the moment he arrived, he took a deep breath and let the peaceful silence wrap around him. The tall grass moved slowly with the breeze, and the old trees stood exactly where they always had. Nothing much had changed. Or at least that's what he thought. He walked a little further in, holding a small notebook where he kept sketches and measurements. His grandfather had always encouraged him to take care of the land and treat it with respect. Today, he was planning to check the boundaries and see if everything was still in order. He didn't expect any surprises. This valley had always been quiet. No drama, no noise, just peace. But as he approached the open area near the stream, he noticed something strange: a fence. A brand new wooden fence that stretched across the valley as if somebody had sliced the land in half and claimed part of it. He stopped walking and stared at it for a long moment. He knew every inch of this valley, and this fence definitely wasn't supposed to be here. He stepped closer, running his hand along the wooden boards. The wood was new, clean, and clearly placed recently. Whoever built it had done it secretly, because he had never given anyone permission to put anything on this land before he could process any of it. Heard footsteps behind him. Fast, heavy footsteps along the dirt path. He turned and saw a woman marching toward him with a furious expression. She looked as if she had been waiting for this moment, as if he had done something terribly wrong. "Hey, you, what do you think you're doing?" she shouted, pointing at him as if he were a criminal caught in the act. He blinked, unsure how to respond at first. "I'm just walking through the valley," he said calmly. "This is my land," the woman scoffed loudly. "Your land? Are you kidding me? This is my family's property. You're trespassing, and I want you gone. Right now." Her voice echoed across the valley, shaking the peaceful morning he had enjoyed just minutes earlier. He took a slow breath, trying not to react harshly. He didn't want to start a fight. He just wanted to understand what was going on. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, keeping his tone steady. "This valley has belonged to my family for generations. I have the papers at home. I came here to check the land like I always do." The woman crossed her arms tightly as if preparing for a battle. "Well, I live right up there," she said, pointing toward a house on the small hill. "And we've always used this valley. My parents used it, and their parents used it. So don't stand here and tell me it's yours." He looked at the house. He remembered seeing it before. But he also knew something she clearly didn't. Houses came long after his grandfather first bought this valley. Her family may have been using it out of habit. Using something doesn't mean owning it. "I'm not trying to argue," he said gently. "I'm just telling you the truth. My grandfather owned this valley long before anyone built a house around here. I grew up visiting him here." She shook her head aggressively. No. You're not going to make up stories. This land has always been ours. You think you can just walk in and claim it? Over my dead body. This is private property, and I'm asking you nicely to leave before I call the police." He felt irritation push up inside him, but he swallowed it. Getting angry would only make her louder. Instead, he tried once more to explain, "I'm not claiming anything. It's already mine. You'll see when I show you the documents. Please calm down. There's no need to threaten me with the police." She stepped closer, invading his personal space like she wanted him to feel intimidated. "If you know what's good for you, you'll walk away and never come back. My family isn't going to let anyone take our land. Not now, not ever." He took a step back, not because he feared her, but because he didn't want this to escalate. Her tone was sharp, her body tense, and her eyes full of anger. Clearly, she had no interest in hearing facts right now. "I'm not going anywhere because I'm not doing anything wrong," he said calmly. "But I'm not here to fight with you either. If you truly believe this is your land, then we can settle it with proper documents." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Documents? Oh, please. You think a piece of paper is going to mean anything? I know what land belongs to my family. I've lived here for 20 years. He almost laughed at how confidently she misunderstood everything. 20 years might sound like a long time, but his grandfather's ownership went back more than 60. But he didn't laugh. He just stood there, watching her argue with full emotion and zero evidence. "I'll bring my documents tomorrow," said simply. "No," she snapped. "You're leaving now, and you're not coming back. I won't allow trespassing. You're lucky I'm giving you a chance to walk away without trouble." He glanced at the fence one more time. A fence she had clearly built on land that wasn't hers. A fence, she thought, proved ownership. But wrong was wrong, and he knew this fence had no legal right to be here. Still, arguing with her today would go nowhere. She was too angry to listen. Too sure of her own assumptions. "All right," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I'll leave for now. But I'm coming back with proof. I hope you'll be willing to listen then." She didn't reply. She simply turned around, muttering something under her breath as she walked back toward her house. He watched her go, feeling a mix of disbelief, frustration, and sadness. He had come here to enjoy the valley, to reconnect with the memories of his grandfather. Instead, he found himself being accused, shouted at, and forced to defend something that had belonged to his family long before the woman was even born. He looked around the valley again, this time noticing details he had missed earlier. The way the fence cut across the grass, blocking the natural pathway his grandfather always walked, the way the boards leaned slightly as if they had been put up in a rush, the way the woman behaved like someone who had made a mistake, but wanted to cover it with confidence and anger. He sighed heavily. His grandfather always told him that whenever there is land involved, tension follows. People get attached to places, even if they aren't theirs. And when fear and pride mix together, people tend to react without thinking. He ran his hand through his hair and turned to leave the valley. He wasn't defeated, only disappointed that something so peaceful had turned into unnecessary conflict as he walked back toward the road. He thought about how strange this whole situation was. Why had she built the fence without asking anyone? Why was she so certain the land belonged to her when she clearly had no documents to prove it? Why did she think yelling would solve anything? Questions were swirling in his mind, but one thing was clear. He needed to bring the documents. He needed to clear this up properly, without shouting threats or anger. When he reached his car, he looked back at the valley one last time. The morning sun was higher now, lighting up the grass in a warm glow. It still looked beautiful, even with the fence cutting through it. He closed the car door softly, promising himself he would not let anyone take this place from him. Not now, not ever. He drove home quietly, thinking about his grandfather's old drawer, where all the land papers were kept. He remembered how the documents looked, the hand-drawn maps, the signatures, the old stamps. He knew everything was still there because he had seen them many times. When he got home, he went straight to the drawer, opened it carefully, and saw the stack of papers just as he remembered. He picked them up gently, as if they were fragile memories. He flipped through each page, confirming that everything he needed was there. The purchase papers, transfer documents, and the map showing the boundary lines. The more he read, the more confident he felt. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't trespassing. He wasn't taking anything from anyone. He was simply standing on land that belonged to his family. He placed the documents in a folder and set it on the table, ready for the next day. His heart felt heavy because of the argument, but also calm because he knew the truth. Tomorrow, he would go back. Tomorrow, he would show the papers. And tomorrow, the woman would have no choice but to accept reality as he sat down and looked out the window. He wondered how she would react. Would she apologize? Would she argue again? Would she finally understand? He didn't know. But he did know one thing: he wasn't giving up the valley. Not for anyone. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The day had started with peace, then turned into conflict, but it wasn't over yet. The valley had always been a part of his life, and he wasn't going to let someone push him away from it. Not now. Not ever. And with that thought, he waited for morning to come. He woke up early the next morning, long before the sun had fully risen. For a moment, He lay still on his bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that had happened the day before. The woman's anger, the fence cutting through his land, and the way she kept insisting the valley belonged to her family, it all replayed in his mind like a scene he couldn't turn off. He rubbed his face slowly and sat up. Today was the day he would go back with the documents. Today he hoped the misunderstanding would finally end. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want arguments. He just wanted the truth to be clear. After a quick breakfast, he grabbed the folder he had prepared. He opened it one more time to make sure the papers were all in place. The original purchase document, the old hand-drawn map, the transfer papers signed by his grandfather, and the survey record from years ago. All of it showed the same thing. The valley belonged to his family. He placed the folder on the passenger seat of his car and drove off. The roads were quiet and the morning looked calm. But inside, he felt a mix of tension and determination. He didn't know how the woman would react. Would she listen today, or would she shout again? He hoped for the first, but he prepared for the second. When he reached the valley, he parked his car near the old tree where his grandfather used to sit. The air was cool, and a soft mist covered the grass. For a moment, he just stood there, taking it all in. This land had always been peaceful. He hated that conflict had entered it now. He walked closer to the fence again. In the daylight, it looked even more out of place. The boards were bright and new, cutting across the natural landscape like a scar. He shook his head quietly. Whoever built it didn't understand the valley at all. Then he heard footsteps again, but this time they weren't fast or angry. They were slow, hesitant, like someone unsure of what they were walking into. He turned and saw the woman approaching. Her posture was still firm, but her expression was less aggressive than yesterday. She stopped a few feet away from him. "Came back," she said, not quite sounding surprised, but not sounding pleased either. "I said I would," he replied calmly. "I brought the documents too." She crossed her arms, but didn't snap at him like before. Maybe she was curious. Maybe she was worried. Maybe her confidence from yesterday wasn't as solid today. He opened the folder slowly and took out the oldest paper, the original deed signed by his grandfather. He held it out to her gently. "This shows when my grandfather bought the valley." She looked at it but didn't take it at first. Her eyes moved across the page, then back up at him. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "From my grandfather's drawer," he said. "He always kept it safe." "I grew up knowing this valley belonged to him." She hesitated, then finally reached out and took the paper. She stared at it longer this time. Her eyebrows pulled together, and he could see she was trying to understand. Maybe for the first time, she was thinking he might actually be telling the truth. He handed her more documents, the map, the transfer papers, the survey report. She looked through them quietly. The silence felt strange. Yesterday, she yelled so loud the whole valley could probably hear. Today, she hardly said a word. After a long minute, she handed the papers back. "I don't know," she muttered, shaking her head. "My family always said this land was part of our property. We've used it for years. We walk our dog here. We have picnics here. We told everyone this valley was ours." He nodded slowly. "I understand that. I'm not blaming you. But using land doesn't mean you own it. Maybe your family assumed it was theirs because no one stopped you, but that doesn't change what the papers say." She looked confused, maybe even a little embarrassed. Her confidence from the day before had faded into uncertainty. "So you're saying, for all these years, we've been walking on your land?" "Yes," he said softly, "but I never had a problem with your family using the valley. It's open. It's beautiful. I never wanted to keep anyone away. But the fence, that changed things." Her eyes shifted toward the fence, and for the first time, she seemed unsure of it. "My brother built it," she said quietly. "He said we needed to mark our land. He thought people might come and try to claim pieces of it. He told me he knew the boundary lines." "Did he check the documents?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, he said he didn't need to. Said he remembered my father telling him the valley was ours." He sighed softly. "It happens. Stories get passed down, and people start believing them even if they aren't accurate." He paused. "But the law doesn't work on stories. It works on documents and boundaries." She looked at the fence again. So, the fence is on your land too? Yes, he answered gently. It cuts through my property. Her shoulders dropped a little, as if realizing the weight of the situation for the first time. I didn't know. I thought you were trying to take something from us. I'm not, he said. I'm only trying to protect what my grandfather left behind, that's all. Before she could say anything else, another sound echoed through the valley, a car driving up the small dirt path. They both turned to look. A white pickup truck parked near the hill, and a man stepped out. He wore a work vest and carried a long case that looked like surveying equipment. Oh, great, she muttered under her breath. My brother must have called someone. But when the man approached, he called out politely, Are you the landowner who requested a boundary check? He nodded, surprised. Yes, I did. Yesterday, after the argument, I called for a surveyor to confirm everything officially. The woman looked startled. You called a surveyor already? I didn't want confusion to drag on, he said simply. I want everything to be clear. For both of us. The surveyor wasted no time. He opened his case, took out his tools, and began setting them on the ground. If you both don't mind, I'll start from the original markers, he said. Markers, the woman repeated, confused. The man pointed toward one of the old tree stumps. There are metal markers placed decades ago to show the boundary. They might be buried under dirt and leaves, but they should still be there. He watched closely as the surveyor walked to the stump and brushed away the soil. Sure enough, after a minute of clearing, a metal boundary marker showed itself old, rusted, but unmistakably real. The woman stepped closer, staring at it in disbelief. I've walked past that stump 100 times. I never knew something was under it. The surveyor continued working, moving from one marker to another. Each time he measured the distance, checked his equipment, and wrote down notes. With every new marker, it became clearer. The valley did belong to him, just like the papers showed. At last, the surveyor walked back toward them. The boundary lines matched the historical documents almost exactly, he said. This fence, however, he pointed at it. It is built around 20 meters inside his land. The woman's face fell. She didn't look angry anymore, just stunned. The surveyor continued. It will have to be moved. It's not on your property. Legally, it can't remain where it is. She swallowed hard and nodded slowly. I understand. The man thanked the surveyor, who packed up his tools and left. The valley grew quiet again. The woman looked down at the ground, then back at him. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought I was doing the right thing yesterday. Thought you were trying to take something from us. He gave her a small, gentle smile. I understand. You were protecting what you believed was yours, but now you know the truth. She let out a long breath. I'll tell my brother. We'll take the fence down. I'm sorry for shouting at you yesterday. I shouldn't have done that. It's okay, he said quietly. I know emotions get high when land is involved. I'm not mad. She nodded, still embarrassed. Thank you for being patient, she said. Most people would have argued back or yelled. You didn't. He shrugged lightly. Arguing wouldn't help either of us. For a moment, they both stood there, looking at the valley. The sun was rising higher, coloring the grass in warm shades of gold. The mist had lifted, revealing the natural beauty of the land once again. This place really means something to you, doesn't it? She asked after a pause. Yes, he said with a soft voice. It was my grandfather's favorite place. He took care of it like it was a living part of our family. I'm just trying to continue that. She nodded again. I understand now. He didn't say anything else. There was nothing more to argue about, nothing more to prove. The documents had spoken. The markers had spoken. The land itself had spoken. I'll come back in a couple of days, she said quietly. We'll start removing the fence. It might take some time, but we'll fix everything. That's all I ask, he replied. She slowly turned and walked back toward her house, her steps quieter than the day before. He stayed for a few minutes longer, standing in the valley and feeling the calm return. Yesterday, he had left with frustration. Today, he felt something closer to peace. The truth was clear now. The valley was still his, just like it had always been. He picked up the folder and held it close. There would still be work to do, conversations to have, and boundaries to restore, but the hardest part was over. He looked. around the valley one more time and whispered, almost as if his grandfather could hear him, "It's still ours." I made sure of it. Then he turned and headed back to his car, ready to face whatever came next. The next morning, he arrived at the valley earlier than usual. The sky was still painted with soft pinks and oranges, and the cold morning air brushed against his face. He carried nothing but a notebook this time. The documents had already spoken for themselves. Today was about understanding how things had gotten so mixed up. As he walked down the small slope into the valley, he noticed something different. The fence looked untouched, but the energy in the place felt lighter, calmer, like the land itself knew yesterday's confusion had started to clear. He walked toward the stream and stood by the water for a moment. The gentle sound of it flowing over smooth stones always brought him peace. His grandfather used to sit here for hours, telling him that nature never lies. People do. People forget. People assume. But the land always stays honest. He smiled at the memory. His grandfather would have handled yesterday with the same calmness, the same patience. He tried to follow that example. He was lost in thought when he heard footsteps again. This time, they were uneven and slow. When he turned, he saw the woman from the day before walking toward him with hesitant steps. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept much. She stopped a few feet from him and took a deep breath. "Morning," she said quietly. "Morning," he replied. There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I told my brother everything," she said. "About the documents. About what the surveyor said." He nodded. "How did he take it?" She sighed. "Not well at first. He kept saying it didn't make sense. He grew up believing this valley was ours. But once I showed him the photos I took of your papers and told him what the surveyor explained, he calmed down a bit. He listened closely. Sensing there was more, he said he wants to talk to you himself," she continued. "Not to argue, just to understand everything properly." He appreciated that. "I'm open to talking," he said. "This valley is big enough for conversations." She cracked a small, tired smile. "Thanks. He'll be here soon." They both stood quietly, looking at the wooden fence. Some of the boards leaned slightly, and others were still perfectly straight. It looked like someone had worked hard on it, but didn't. No, they were placing it in the wrong spot. Then they heard the sound of a truck climbing up the dirt path. Moments later, a tall man got out and walked toward them. His posture was firm. His face didn't show anger, just confusion. He stopped near them and looked at the valley, then at the fence, then at him. "You're the owner?" the man asked. "Yes," he replied calmly. The man took a slow breath. "My sister told me everything. I just want to understand. We've been using this valley for so long. I'm honestly surprised." "I understand the confusion," he said, "but I didn't come to blame anyone. I came today because I want us to clear things up respectfully." The man nodded and shifted his weight awkwardly. "Can I see the papers?" "Of course," he said. He opened his notebook where he had placed photocopies of the documents. He handed them over, and the man studied each one. He looked carefully at the old map, tracing the lines with his finger. He leaned closer to check the signatures. He even compared them with the photos his sister had taken. After several long minutes, he exhaled heavily. "This is clear," he said quietly. "I won't argue with legal proof. It's your land." His sister looked relieved, like a weight had lifted from her shoulders. "I want to make something clear too," he said gently. "I never had an issue with you or your family enjoying the valley. It's a beautiful area. I understand why you've come here over the years. I would never try to stop anyone from appreciating this place. But the fence?" He looked at it. "That changes everything. It cuts through my property and makes it look like the land is yours." The man nodded slowly. "I understand. I should have checked before building it. I was trying to be protective, but I acted on old family stories instead of real documents." She added softly, "We really thought this was ours. I didn't yell yesterday just to yell. I truly believed you were in the wrong." He nodded. "I know. That's why I didn't take it personally." The man ran a hand through his hair. "We'll remove the fence. I already talked to a couple of workers who can help. It'll probably take a few days, but we'll do it. It's all I needed," he said. There was a small silence again, but this time it didn't feel tense. It felt like understanding was finally settling into place. The man walked closer to the fence and touched one of the boards. You know, I built this thing with my own hands, he said with a hint of sadness. If I knew the truth earlier, I wouldn't have done it. But, he shrugged, mistakes happen. He stepped beside the man. Everyone makes mistakes, he said softly. What matters is fixing them. They stood side by side for a moment, both looking at the fence, one seeing it as a mistake, the other seeing it as an interruption to a peaceful memory. After a while, the man turned to him. My father. He used to tell us stories about how his parents used this valley. I guess the stories got mixed up. Over time, we started believing we owned it. It happens, he replied kindly. Stories can be passed down in a way that feels real. The man nodded. I guess what I'm trying to say is, thank you for not treating us like enemies. He smiled genuinely. There's no need to fight when the truth is clear. The man extended his hand. I'm sorry for the trouble we caused. He shook the man's hand firmly. And I'm sorry you had to deal with this confusion. It wasn't easy for either of us. His sister stepped forward too. Her voice was quiet, almost embarrassed. I'm sorry for yelling at you. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. It's all right, he said. Yesterday was stressful, but today is better, she nodded, looking grateful. Thank you. After the apologies were exchanged, the man went back to his truck to get some tools. He returned with a measuring tape and started figuring out how much work the fence removal would take. The woman stood next to him, watching. He's stubborn, she whispered with a small smile. But he's not a bad person, he smiled back. I can see that. He watched the man measure the fence for a few minutes. Then he looked at him and said, If you want, you can come back tomorrow. We'll be working on taking it down. I'll be here, he said. I want to help too, the man paused. You don't have to do that. It's our mistake. I know, he said, but at the end of the day, we're neighbors, and neighbors help each other. The man gave him a warm, grateful look. Thank you. That means a lot. They continued talking for a few minutes while the valley slowly filled with sunlight. The morning birds began to chirp, and a soft breeze rustled the grass. The peaceful feeling he always loved finally returned. After a while, the man packed up his tools. We'll start tomorrow morning. My friend will bring extra hands. I'll be here, he said again. The siblings walked back toward the house on the hill. Before leaving, the woman turned and said, You know, I really want to understand what your grandfather loved so much about this valley. I never saw it the way you do. He looked at the trees, the stream, the gentle bend of the grass. Maybe once things settle, he said softly, I can show you some of the places he loved. She smiled a little. I'd like that. He watched them walk away, then turned back to the valley. The sunlight now covered the entire field, making everything glow. For the first time in days, he felt hopeful. There was no more yelling, no more misunderstanding, no more assumptions. Just the truth clear, simple, and shared. He walked along the stream, remembering all the moments he had spent here as a child. Every stone reminded him of a story his grandfather had told. Every tree reminded him of afternoons spent sitting under the branches as he walked. He thought about how easy it is for people to hold on to assumptions for years, even decades. One wrong belief can turn into a family story. A family story can turn into certainty. And certainty, when built on something untrue, can lead to conflict. But even misunderstandings can be fixed if people are willing to listen. He sat on the ground near the stream and let the sound of the flowing water calm him. He knew tomorrow would be a long day with the fence work, but he didn't mind. What mattered was the peace returning to the valley. After a while, he stood up and walked along the edge of the valley, checking the old boundary markers the surveyor had uncovered. Each one was still in place, solid and dependable, unlike memories that change over time. By the time he reached his car, he felt a deep sense of relief. Things were moving in the right direction. The valley was safe. The truth was known, and the neighbors were no longer enemies, but people trying to make things right. He placed his notebook in the car and took one last look at the valley before driving off. The fence still stood for now, but only for a short time. Soon, the land would be open again. Just as his grandfather loved it, tomorrow would bring work understanding, and maybe even a new kind of peace between the families. And for the first time since the argument began, he looked forward to the next day. The moment the surveyor finished his measurements, the air around the valley felt different. It was like the wind itself had paused, waiting to see what would happen next. Imran stood quietly near the old tree line, hands in his pockets, calm but tired. He had expected resistance, but he hadn't expected things to drag out this far. Still, he kept reminding himself that patience always wins in the end. The surveyor cleared his throat softly as he packed away his tools. Karen stood a short distance away with her arms folded, shifting from foot to foot. Moments earlier, she had been bold and loud. But once the measurements started turning against her, she grew quieter and quieter. Now she looked uneasy, her confidence slipping the way loose sand does under a person's feet. Imran didn't say a word. He simply waited. He knew the truth didn't need drama, and he didn't want to embarrass her more than necessary. He just wanted fairness. Finally, the surveyor walked toward them with a clipboard in hand. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't cold either. He carried the kind of expression people have when they know the truth might cause trouble. "All right," he said gently. "The property boundary is clear. The fence on the west and south sides is built inside your land, sir." He nodded toward IMRAN. Karen stiffened immediately. "They can't be right," she blurted out. "We've had that fence for years. My husband put it there himself. There's no way we're wrong." Her voice shook, not with anger this time, but with worry. The surveyor kept his tone polite. "I understand this may be surprising, but the documents and measurements line up perfectly. The fence is about 20 meters into his land." For a moment, Karen said nothing. Her eyes darted to the fence, then to the trees, then back at the surveyor. It was like her mind was trying to find an escape route from the truth. Imran took a small step forward, but he spoke softly. "Look, I'm not trying to take anything from you. I just want my land back the way it's meant to be. This valley belongs to my grandfather's memory. I can't let it go." Karen lifted her chin, but her voice lacked the force she had earlier. "This isn't fair. We didn't know. You can't expect us to just undo everything." The surveyor gave her a sympathetic look. "Ma'am, you're not losing anything that legally belongs to you. You're simply moving the fence off your neighbor's land. That's all." The words hit her hard. She bit down on her lip, then looked away, blinking quickly. Her pride was bruised, and maybe that hurt more than anything else. For a few minutes, nobody spoke. A bird chirped in the distance. Leaves rustled. The world around them continued calmly, as if telling them this wasn't the end of anything, just a correction. Karen finally exhaled deeply and said, "Can I see the papers again?" Imran nodded and pulled out the folder he'd brought. She hesitated before taking it, but she did. As she flipped through the documents, her expression softened from frustration to reluctant acceptance. "These are old papers," she murmured. "And the map. It shows the stream running right behind where we put the fence." "Yes." Imran replied gently. "The stream was always the marker. It's been like that for decades. My grandfather told me stories about it when I was little. He said the land begins at the stream and stretches to the ridge." Karen swallowed, her shoulders drooping slightly. "I honestly didn't know. I thought our land went farther." "I understand," Imran said. "I don't blame you. But now that we know, we should fix it properly." She handed the papers back with a slow nod. Her voice was small when she spoke again. "I'll talk to my husband. We'll take care of it." There was a moment where she seemed like she wanted to apologize, but pride tugged at her again. She held the words back and just stood there, awkward and unsure. Imran didn't push her. He simply said, "Thank you. That's all I ask." The surveyor packed his final tools and walked toward his vehicle. Karen turned and headed back toward her home, walking faster than usual, as if she wanted the conversation to end as quickly as possible. Imran stayed behind a little longer. He stepped toward the fence that had caused so much trouble and touched one of the wooden posts. It was old but sturdy. He didn't feel anger, only relief. Relief that the truth had come out without things turning ugly. He remembered how confident she had been that first day when she told him to get off her land.
No.
Now everything had changed. Not because he fought, but because he stood firm. Sometimes standing quietly can be louder than shouting. The next day, when Imran came back to check on the valley, he noticed neighbors talking near their driveways. They weren't loud or judgmental. They were simply whispering with the kind of tone people use when something unexpected happens in an otherwise quiet place. One neighbor even gave Imran a small nod of respect as he passed. They must have heard what happened. News always traveled fast in such areas. As Imran walked deeper into the valley, he replayed everything in his mind. The confrontation, the inspection, the shock on Karen's face when she realized she was wrong. It all felt unreal, yet peaceful in a strange way. He reached the stream that marked the true boundary. The water moved gently, making a soft sound that always soothed him. He crouched down and touched the water like he used to when he was younger. His grandfather had once told him that the stream was the heart of the valley. Now, it was also the key to proving the truth. For a moment, Imran closed his eyes and breathed deeply. This land wasn't just soil and rocks. It was a story, a connection, a promise kept. He stood up and looked around. The valley looked the same, but it felt different now. It felt protected the way it should have been all along. Later that week, Imran saw workers arrive at Karen's property. They carried tools and equipment and were clearly there to fix the fence. Karen stood near her porch, arms crossed again, but this time she wasn't angry. She was embarrassed. She didn't look at Imran. Even though she knew he was watching from a distance, Imran didn't wave or stare. He kept his distance, respecting the moment. Watching someone correct their mistake was never something to enjoy or celebrate. It was just life moving forward. As the workers pulled out the old fence posts, Karen finally glanced his way. Their eyes met for just a second. Her expression was hard to read, but it wasn't hostile. It looked more like acceptance, maybe even a hint of regret. Amer gave her a polite nod. Not a victory nod, just a simple human gesture that said, "It's okay. It's done now." Karen paused, then gave a tiny nod back before turning away. It wasn't an apology. But it was close. The fence was rebuilt properly by the end of the week. For the first time in years, Imran's valley stood in its true form, open and untouched. As he walked along the new boundary, he felt a sense of peace that went deeper than words. The land finally felt whole again. And he knew that this moment, this quiet reclaiming, was the beginning of something even more meaningful. The valley had its truth back. And now, he could decide what to do with it next. The valley looked different now, not because anything grand had changed, but because the truth had finally settled into its place. The fence stood along the correct boundary, neat and straight, leaving the land open the way it was meant to be. Imran walked along the new line slowly, with quiet steps, like someone revisiting a place from his childhood. In a way, that's exactly what he was doing. He took in everything: the gentle curve of the hillside, the soft whisper of the wind brushing through the grass, the sound of the small stream moving like it always had. Even the sunlight seemed warmer, as if the land itself was breathing peacefully again. For the first time in a long while, Imran felt like the valley belonged to him in a deeper way. Not because the papers proved it, but because he had stood up for it, protected it, and kept the promise he once made to himself when he was young. He remembered his grandfather, his voice telling him that the valley was a gift, something you don't sell or forget or abandon. Land remembers the feet that care for it, his grandfather used to say. Imran smiled at the memory. Maybe that was true. Maybe that's why being here always calmed him as he walked. He noticed a few of the workers from earlier had left behind a small pile of unused wooden stakes. He picked one up, feeling the rough surface beneath his fingers. It was strange how something so simple, a wooden post, had caused so much tension just weeks earlier. He set the stake down again and continued walking. He didn't hold any bitterness toward Karen. People make mistakes. People get things wrong. And sometimes pride makes those mistakes bigger. But in the end, she had done the right thing, even if it came with hesitation. Later that afternoon, Imran sat on a large, flat rock near the stream. The water moved steadily, clear enough to reflect pieces of the blue sky. He took off his shoes and dipped his feet into the cool water. The sensation brought back so many memories running through the valley as a boy. Splashing in the same stream with his cousins, picking wild berries with his grandfather, it felt good to stop and just exist in the moment. A soft sound caught his attention. Footsteps approaching slowly. Imran turned and saw Karen walking toward him. Her shoulders were tense, and she kept her hands clasped nervously in front of her. For a second, he wondered if there was some new problem. But the look on her face wasn't defensive. It was unsure. "Do you have a moment?" she asked quietly. Amor nodded. "Of course." Karen stopped a few steps away, looking down at the ground before she spoke. "I wanted to say, I know this won't undo anything, but I'm sorry." Her voice trembled a little. "I really thought that land was ours. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I just believed what I'd been told for years." Imran studied her expression. Her pride was still there, lingering in her posture, but she was trying, and that mattered. "It's all right," he said gently. "I know you didn't mean harm. These things happen. I'm just glad we got everything sorted out properly." Karen nodded slowly. She glanced toward the stream, then back at him. "You really care about this place?" "I do," Imran replied. "It's more than land to me. It holds memories." For a moment, Karen didn't speak. She just listened to the sound of the stream and the soft rustling of the trees. "I can see that now," she eventually said. "I didn't understand it before." She paused again, then added, "Thank you for being patient. You could have made things much harder for us. You could have shouted or dragged this into a fight, but you didn't." Imran shrugged lightly. There was no need. The truth was enough. Karen offered a small, grateful smile, something he hadn't expected to see from her. "Well, if you ever need help with anything around here, feel free to ask." "Thank you," Imran said kindly. She nodded again before heading back toward her home. Her steps seemed lighter than before, as if releasing the weight she had been carrying. Once she was gone, Imran leaned back on the rock and let out a slow breath. The valley felt even more peaceful now that the tension had lifted completely. Days passed, and the valley settled back into its natural rhythm. Sometimes, Imran caught glimpses of Karen outside her home, but the sharpness in her posture was gone. She no longer avoided his presence. In fact, she sometimes offered a brief nod or small wave. Neighbors greeted him with a little more warmth now, too. Some of them had heard pieces of the story, and word had spread about how calmly he handled everything. A few even asked him about the valley's history. Curious to know more about the old stream and the ridge, Imran didn't seek attention. But he appreciated the simple respect. One morning, he stood at the far end of the valley, watching birds hop along the grass. The sun was rising slowly, painting the sky in soft colors that blended into the hills. He felt grateful. Grateful for the land, for the outcome, and for the quiet strength that had guided him through the conflict. He spent the next few weeks cleaning up parts of the valley that had been neglected. He pulled out old weeds, cleared fallen branches, and even planted a few new trees along the stream. Every time he planted one, he whispered a small memory of his grandfather into the soil. Nothing dramatic. Just a gentle acknowledgement of someone who once taught him how to respect the land. As the valley regained its beauty, Imran made a decision. He wanted to preserve the place, not just for himself, but for future generations. He began planning small improvements, building a simple wooden bench near the stream, creating a small walking path, and placing a small stone marker where the view of the valley was the strongest. It wasn't about making it fancy. It was about honoring it. One afternoon, while he was setting up a wooden post for the new bench, Karen approached again, this time more confidently. "That looks nice," she said. "Are you turning the valley into a little retreat?" Imran smiled. "Not really. Just trying to keep it clean and peaceful. I want it to stay simple." Karen nodded in understanding. "I think that's a good idea. It suits the place." They didn't talk long. Just a few friendly exchanges. But the tone was different now. Calmer, lighter, more human. Weeks later, the bench was finished. The path was shaped, and the valley looked like a place where stories could live, old ones, new ones, and everything in between. Imran sat on the bench one evening, listening to the soft sounds of the valley. He thought about the confrontation, the inspection, the difficult conversations, and the resolution. Everything had unfolded in a way he couldn't have predicted. Yet it felt like it had brought him closer to the land. He learned something important. Sometimes conflict leads to clarity, and sometimes standing quietly can be stronger than shouting. Before heading home, Imran stood at the edge of the stream and looked across the valley one last time. The sky was turning orange, the hills glowing gently under the fading light. "This is where it belongs," he whispered softly, "and this is where it will stay." The valley didn't answer with words, but the wind carried a peaceful breeze across the land, almost like a response. Imran smiled, took one last breath of the calm evening air, and walked away with a full heart, knowing the story of the valley had finally come full circle.